right, welcome back, everybody. This is Skeptics, episode 8. I'm flying solo again, as you can see, because my co-hosts have families and real lives and some nonsense like that. So, today I get to talk to you guys all by my lonesome about the big one, aliens. And you probably can't see my hands well enough. I'm doing Sukalos here. Aliens. We're talking about aliens. Probably for the next couple of episodes. So in this one, I just kind of wanted to, because I'm a talker, wanted to get a lot of my ideas out there, so that I don't have to do that when I'm recording with Tom and Josh, because I end up talking over them a lot, and that's not good podcasting, you know? So you guys get to hear me drone on in this one. So where to begin? Yeah. Aliens. Well, for starters, let's take it at just a very broad scope. Let's talk about life on other planets. I think life on other planets is an inevitability. It seems like maybe our planet is very well suited to life, treats life very well, is a good flower bed for life. But it seems to me like there are enough places out there that there are inevitably other Edens like ours for life on other planets. But there are probably also, in way more extreme, way less conducive environments, there's probably also still simple life. That can include, as we're all waiting to find out, places in our own solar system. Venus, some years ago, I think through, what do you call it? Spectrochromatography, something, the thing where they look at the wavelength absorption of light coming from a planet, and that helps them determine what compounds are present or what elements are present, something like that. I think that was the method they used. They discovered that there was something called phosphine gas in Venus's atmosphere, in amounts that didn't really make sense for a dead planet, or rather a planet with no biological life on it. Because we don't know of any non-biological processes that create good amounts of phosphine here on Earth. So when this was, and I think it's only been measured that way once. I don't know if that's been a repeated observation or not, but when that was observed in Venus's atmosphere, initially the thought was, well, maybe high up in Venus's atmosphere there are microbes floating around that are, I guess, munching on the sulfur gas and creating phosphine, something like that. So it's a possible biosignature, and it's something that scientists are wanting to look further into. There's a lot of skepticism about it. A lot of part of the conversation is that the results may have just kind of been misinterpreted to show more phosphine than there actually is. And so we won't have a better idea of what the case is until we send a probe there to scoop up some of Venus's atmosphere and chemically test it, I think. But, we may have simple life here in our own solar system, and it may be surviving in a pretty extreme environment. If any of that is true. There's also optimism about possible life in places like Europa. Under Europa's ice shell, I think it's understood that there is a lot of liquid water under the surface, and it's cold, but things live in cold water here, so there very likely could be life. Well, I don't know how likely it is, but obviously it would depend on a lot of other things being present than water. But it's a place that we're interested in looking into and finding out about. Yeah, on that note, I think it's interesting that there's kind of this concept out there that like scientists are close-minded about the idea of life on other planets, alien life. And I don't think that's true. What I see when I'm, looking into this stuff, what I tend to see is that hobbyists, people who think of themselves as scientists without ever, practicing anything in a scientific field, just people who have an interest in the stuff, those are the people that are like weirdly close-minded about things. They think that to eschew any kind of strange or fantastic possibilities somehow makes them more scientific or something, and it doesn't. It's just, I don't know. I don't know why it happens, but that doesn't really seem to be the attitude among serious scientists, like actual astronomers and actual biologists and people who like actually spend their time thinking about and studying these things in methodical ways. Like there seems to be a pretty broad acceptance of the idea that there will likely be life elsewhere in the universe. So there's a culture, I think, among people like us, people who intake a lot of podcasts and read a lot of fringe articles and stuff. There's a culture among us to tend to like distance ourselves from the scientists, or like put a division there and be like, well, they're the dogmatic, close-minded, blah, blah, blah. We might not, know everything, but we're the open-minded people and we at least entertain the possibilities. And I just don't think that's like fully true, especially when it comes to astronomy. I think that the scientists are open-minded folk. And I think that there are just, again, a lot of lay researchers, readers, hobbyists that are close-minded and tend to shut people down in like interpersonal conversation. So like you get it from people that you know personally. They're like, no, I don't think there's aliens, and they, regurgitate some simple information that they read at some point. And that's tends to be where it happens. I think that's where the closed-mindedness is most present. But again, grace for the scientists, because they are pretty interested in it, pretty open-minded about it, it seems, generally speaking. And they want to know as bad as we do. And they're doing more to find out than we are. So there's that. Anyway, that was a tangent. All that is to say that serious-minded people in scientific fields, people at NASA, people in other organizations that are government-funded, they're all very interested in finding out if we have life here in our own solar system. They're open to that possibility. They're optimistic about there being life in further reaches, for sure. So I guess leaving that question of like, is there life out there, leaving that now and going into what we really want to talk about, which is aliens. Giorgio Tsoukalos aliens, gray aliens. Yeah, I'm a nut. I think they're real. I think that the stereotypical gray alien report, I think we have those images and those stories because people have really encountered them. Obviously, I think a majority of the reported encounters are false claims. I think there is more made up about it than there is actual experience with it. So that muddies the waters when you're trying to put your finger on like what is real and what isn't. But you do your best to be discerning and take in as much information as possible and sift through, and more often than not you find yourself throwing things out, but come across really interesting stuff too. And in my experience, that has just pointed me to the belief that we probably have been visited by extraterrestrials. And, excuse me, maybe interdimensionals, as some people say. And yeah, I think the gray alien form that we're all familiar with, I think that is a real thing, whatever it represents. I tend to think alien, like off planet, in terms of origin. Doesn't mean that they can't be like settled here somewhere as well. The idea that they are, humans from the future, because they have kind of the same anatomical layout as us, and some of our features, which are progressive right now, they seem to be like an extrapolation of those features. And so the idea that they are future humans is also very compelling. I think that considering them, like our descendants coming from the future, and considering them to be extraterrestrials visiting us from a different planet, I don't think those have to be mutually exclusive. I think you could have a situation where both of those things are true. And what that might look like is that these are beings that are settled on another planet somewhere, probably on several. And in traveling through space to get to us, they might also be traveling through time to get to us. Since we know space-time is one cohesive thing, then, manipulating one is manipulating the other, and extreme travel through one might easily go hand in hand with extreme travel through the other. Again, it's one medium. So, they could be our descendants millions of years from now, or depending on the extent of the genetic manipulation, if you believe those theories, could be our descendants just thousands of years from now, and could also be visiting us from other planets. Yeah, I kind of lean that way. I think we do have a common origin, them and us, and they might be directly descended from us, or we might just have a common ancestor going way, way back. No matter what it is, it's weird. No matter what, like if these gray aliens are real, then whatever they are represents something really weird, really out there, something very different than what we usually accept as true about ourselves and about the universe. So it's all very interesting. Let's see, what else? Have a list of bullet points here. What should we hit? I guess UFOs is a logical next place to go. The UFO phenomenon is really hot right now. It's very interesting. It's very interesting how much mainstream recognition it is getting, and how these days there are probably more people coming to the aid of whistleblowers and trying to actually hear them out and whatnot than there are people just shutting them down or calling them liars, which has not always been the case. Usually it's been like the majority of people kind of have a naysaying attitude about it, and then a fringe minority take certain claims seriously and maybe investigate them. But it seems like some sort of page has been turned where there's just so much more acceptance of the phenomenon as a real thing, whether or not it means aliens or anything else. The phenomenon in and of itself of unidentified flying objects that are, let's say, exotic, weird, that phenomenon is very well accepted in scientific circles, in openly communicated government circles, like even the front-facing side of that, in social circles. in media cycles. It's fairly well accepted that it is an actual phenomenon. And honestly, the number of people that are out there just going like, nah, there's no UFOs. People just don't know what they're seeing and attributing all sightings to that. Uh, Honestly, those people are dying out. There are so few of them. They're no longer the majority voice. And that's just been an interesting development in the last decade. It's been very interesting. But to tie that in, I do tend to think that UFOs are related to the phenomenon of alien encounters. And specifically, I just really like the grays and the experiences people report in those situations with those beings. Excuse me. And I think that UFOs are an aspect of the same phenomenon. I think the simple version of it that we're all familiar with, where UFOs equals aliens, and aliens might equal a lot of different things, but that definitely includes gray aliens. That's the version I subscribe to. On that note, Roswell, New Mexico UFO crash, 1947. That is a story about which many tales have been woven. And it's pretty hard to separate, fact from fiction. The only thing that's like for certain not fact is that something mundane happened, including the U.S. military's secondary cover-up attempt of saying that this was a crashed unit of Project Mogul. That just, sorry, no sale. It doesn't work. Doesn't account for the tiniest fraction of what was recorded to have happened. So yeah, the only thing that's for sure not a fact is that story, and the previous story that the government told that it was a generic weather balloon. Whatever it was something weird. It could have been other military spycraft, like an actual aircraft, rather than a balloon or a microphone system. Could have been governmental, could have been human. But if so, we haven't gotten that story yet. I do think, though, that it probably was alien in nature. I do buy that. As to the different stories of whether there was one crash or two crashes, and what exactly the site of those crashes were, including stories from like firsthand witnesses that in some cases corroborate each other and in other cases disagree with each other. I have a real hard time taking a stance on any of those because there's just so much. And a lot of it is compelling. There are a lot of people that seem to be able to back up some of what they're saying. And in other cases, just tell the story in a very convincing way. So yeah, you have a hard time knowing what to believe. But Roswell, I think, was an alien crash, a UFO crash, and what follows, who knows? Lots of stories about they took in a live alien. He lived till 1952. Some stories are he could talk and told us everything. We could communicate with him. He told us everything about his home world, and then we sent a bunch of commandos there on some sort of exchange program. And then there are simpler versions where we never successfully communicated with him, but he died a few short years later. And other stories that say that there was no live alien recovered. Stories that include bodies at the wreckage. Stories that say there were no bodies at the wreckage. Every version of the thing has been told. So yeah, I have a hard time taking a stance on like what came from that as well. Anyway, what else? Let's see. We talked about life in general, UFOs, Roswell, common origin with humans, the gray archetype. Oh, let's talk about a weird one. Crop circles. Now, please, if you're here, you're probably an open-minded person. Otherwise, you're probably laughing out loud at most of what I'm saying. But even you open-minded people, please don't laugh at me on this next part. Laugh if you want. I don't care. Crop circles, okay? Crop circles are one of those things that it was one of the first illusions that I was rid of as a child, that crop circles had anything to do with aliens, because we know that they are fake. We know that people stomp them out in other people's crops, trespass and crush their plants and follow little hand-drawn, mapped out designs and create these really intricate, insane designs in people's crops to be viewed from the sky. We know that happens. And because we know that happens, I fully accepted from my adolescence onward that crop circles are fully attributable to that. Sometime around, I don't know, I guess I was probably in college, I began to, access more stories about them and information about them, and found that there are differences in crop circles, and that some of them present things that are a little less easy to explain. And basically, at the end of the day, what it comes down to is there are probably a majority of crop circles which are man-made, and a minority, including some of the earliest ones, that are something else that we probably don't fully understand because of the nature of what it does to the crop, the actual structure of the crop. I don't know. I can't remember what any of the other indicators were, but there are distinctions between obviously man-made crop circles and less obviously, potentially not man-made crop circles. As for associating that with UFOs and aliens, again, it's a toughie because the original idea was literally just the first one that was spotted in, I think, Queensland. The idea was this UFO kind of sat down or hovered over the grass, and that was just the imprint it left. It was just a parking mark from the vehicle. And what it has become is something else entirely. It's become, the idea is, I suppose, that they intentionally design and stamp these designs onto crops in order to communicate. And whether both of those are true, whether some of the first crop circles happened because they were landing and creating weird disturbances and effects on the plants underneath them, and then because of our weird obsession with them and our imitation of them and whatnot, if they then thought, well, you know what, we can use this as a form of communication, and then continued to create them, albeit intentionally this time, I could buy that. I could see both of those being true. They are happenstance, or they started out as being happenstance, and then later some of them are done intentionally because they see us stomping designs into crops and realize that we have some sort of fascination with it. And so some of the later ones that are obviously intelligently designed, but which have those weird characteristics inflicted on the crops that we can't really explain, some of those might come from that, from intentional attempts at communication. And that brings me to, we posted this as a short on our YouTube channel, and we posted it on TikTok. but the story of what's called the Arecibo reply, which is just one I've been digging into recently. The really just crazy, intricate nature of it leads you to believe that it's a person just trying to just create the most elaborate, cool, like Banksy style, just like go make something that's going to get people's attention. It has that sort of air about it. I don't know whether this particular crop formation was one that has those weird characteristics in the plants or not. So I can't swear as to the nature of it in that way. But it's an interesting thing. So this story starts with what's called the Arecibo message. Carl Sagan and Frank Drake designed from ones and zeros, from binary. They designed a pictograph that's meant to be laid out, 23 digits at a time, stacked, and it communicates a simple message as to who we are, us who are sending this message out into space. And then they tapped out those ones and zeros in a radio broadcast pointed toward the Messier 13 star cluster. They did that in 1974. And the idea is whoever receives it will see that there's some structure to the on and off, the 1 and 0 alternation. They'll see that there's some structure. They'll toy with it, and they'll eventually find that this 23-digit line setup is what creates a cohesive image, or a structure that some sense could be made out of. So we trusted the decoding to whoever receives the message. And it communicates via simple visual cues and simple numerical cues. It communicates, essentially what we look like morphologically. Some information about our DNA and the important components of our DNA. Communicates, like what the human population is, which I think was it was like 4 billion or something at the time. And a little bit of information about our solar system, including that we're the third planet from our star and that we're one of the smaller ones, and our system includes a few comparatively larger ones. So this message was beamed out into space, and in 2001, we received a reply. That's, debatable. There was a crop formation either stomped out or somehow stamped into a field near the Chilbolton radio telescope and observatory in England. And this crop formation had the exact layout of the Arecibo message. And so people started referring to it as the Arecibo reply. And what's interesting about it is, for starters, the reply, whether fictional or not, is clever and fun and interesting. And given that it is intended to be a reply, they, replaced a little human figure with a little gray alien figure. They changed some of the information, including the population. Like, this is our population. Here's the information about our star system. Here's a little information about our DNA. And so we get to see some of the differences. So it might have been a fun little science fiction project, in which case I commend whoever came up with the details, because they're fun. But one of the things I find most interesting about it, and one of the reasons I want this to be real, is the star system that they refer to in their pictograph. The design shows that whatever star system this species belongs to, they have a smaller star than ours, And we know that red dwarfs are the most common type of star in our galaxy, so presumably it's a red dwarf. They show a system with 9 planets. All of them, except for 2, are relatively the same size. They're all displayed with 1 pixel each. 2 of them are displayed with 2 pixels, so relatively bigger than the others, but the system is without as much variation as our own. And they indicate that planets 3, 4, and 5 from their star are all inhabited, or that they inhabit all of them. And then there's like special attention drawn to the 5th planet in their system, leading you to think either like this is where they originated, or that at first I was like, maybe that's like where the message was broadcast from, but then they didn't broadcast a message, they stamped it into a field. So if anything, it's more likely supposed to mean that is where they originated from, but that they inhabit all 3 of these planets. Yeah, this was in 2001. This was before I think any exoplanets were observed and cataloged. It was kind of it was kind of accepted that like there must be other planets out there. Like, wouldn't make sense for 9 lovely, well, I guess 8 lovely planets to be orbiting our one sun, but then all the hundreds of billions of other stars out there didn't have any such satellites. So I think it was somewhat understood that there are other planets out there. We had simply never set eyes on any or recorded data to demonstrate that there were any. I think the first real confirmation we got of that was like in 2002. Again, this Arecibo reply came in 2001. So it could not have been designed to mimic any known systems. That's my whole point. If it was just a fiction that by happenstance shared a lot in common with a real star system, that's, I suppose, every bit as likely as it representing something real. Let me back up. In 2016, from 2016 and onward, we've come to know more and more about a star system called the TRAPPIST-1 system. And there are a lot of features of this particular star system that are similar to the system shown in this pictograph in the Arecibo reply. So that similarity being noted could be coincidental, because there's only a certain number of variables you're working with if you're building a star system in the way that they are displayed in these pictographs. So it could be coincidence. It could be real, or but basically the only thing it could not be is someone attempting to say like, oh, they're from the TRAPPIST-1 system, whose planets we didn't know existed back then. So it's not a mimicry of something real. It's either fiction and coincidentally shares features with TRAPPIST-1, or it is real. So I'm in the, crossing my fingers camp, like, oh, please be real. That'd be so cool. It does seem unlikely that they would communicate this information in a crop formation rather than just radioing us back. But I don't know. But those similarities are as follows. The TRAPPIST-1 system has, at the moment, 7 confirmed planets. There is, I guess, based on some predictive equation that I forget the name of, there is some suggestion that there may be an 8th. And one of the implications of there being an 8th is that we would have to adjust our understanding of the masses that we assign to each of the currently known planets. And I think that's just because like we can observe the gravitational effects on all the bodies there to a degree. And so we calculate the masses of each by knowing how many they are and about how far they are from each other and stuff like that. So if there is an eighth one that's contributing to the overall gravitational register on all of these bodies, then that affects basically the masses that are present. And the reason that's important is because one thing that does not match between the pictograph and the TRAPPIST-1 system is the relative sizes of the planets. These are all relatively the same size. There are 3 planets that could be said to be bigger than the others, but not in the same way that Neptune is bigger than Earth. Much closer in size than that. But I think the biggest planet is number 6 out of the 7. And then the 2 other slightly bigger ones are 1 and 2. And in the pictograph, you have all of them the same size up until 6. And 6 and 7 are shown to be slightly bigger. And then 8 and 9 are back down to 1 pixel each. So, what am I getting at? There may be an 8th planet, which would kind of adjust our understanding of the masses of each of the bodies. So, the way we currently depict the size of all of these planets is nothing concrete. But if there's an 8th, then we're 1 planet away from a 9-planet system as depicted in the pictograph. And by happenstance, the 3rd, 4th, and 5th planet in this system are the only planets in the habitable zone, and the pictograph shows planets 3, 4, and 5 as being inhabited. And weirdly, just like I enjoy coincidences. I often take them as cues to pay attention to something. I did happen to learn by coincidence about the Arecibo reply and the TRAPPIST-1 system like on the same day. Apparently TRAPPIST-1 is old news. Arecibo reply is even older news. I don't know why I didn't know about both of these, but I learned about them on the same day. And when I first saw the Arecibo reply, I was like, oh, I wonder if we know of any systems that fit the bill. And so I kind of was like, I didn't look real hard into it, but I was like noodling on, what constellations might be in that direction and whatnot, and just trying to get an idea of like what stars should I look into to find out if we know if they have any planets that match up. And before I really got into it, later in the same day, I just happened to watch a video that was talking about TRAPPIST-1, and they gave a little depiction, and it was like first 2 planets are, without atmosphere, probably uninhabitable, definitely too close to their sun. 3, 4, and 5 are in the habitable zone, and then it has these other ones beyond it, and I'm like, well, that's already like way more alignment than I thought I would find between the pictograph and any real system. So I was immediately drawn in by that and just started to focus on TRAPPIST-1. Now, TRAPPIST-1 is not in the direction of the Messier 13 star cluster. It's not there. It's not between us and there. It's off in the Aquarius constellation. So different area. But it's like that doesn't mean anything to me. They're kind of our neighbors. If they picked up this message in transit or something, like that's good enough for me. What else? So relative sizes of the planets, number of planets. I guess that's another important thing is there might be an 8th. We don't know. And beyond that, like there might be a 9th. We just don't have a very, a very concrete idea of what this system looks like. We have a lot of the important facts right now, but not all of them. So all I'm saying is if they find a 9th rocky planet around TRAPPIST-1, and if the relative sizes of the planets begin to look like the relative sizes of the planets in that pictograph, I'm going to freak out a little bit. So anyway, yeah, current fan theory is that the Arecibo reply came from gray aliens in the TRAPPIST-1 system, or that come from the TRAPPIST-1 system that might be here. Yeah, I don't know if there's anything else I want to get into, but glad I got to lay all that out in a forum where I'm not talking over someone else, because I've been having a lot of fun with that one lately. And beyond that specific case, just talking generally about what some of my thoughts about aliens and UFOs are has been fun. So glad I got to do that, and I can't wait to hear what Tom and Josh have to say about any and all of this, and any ideas of their own outside of anything I've talked about. Yeah, aliens. Let's get it. Thanks, guys. We'll see you next time.